this show start. Soon as you hear this go, from ATLANTA and all the way down to yo, lower than your mama's ever seen it in a lifetime. Never would have imagined it, not even in her right mind.
Anthem's main traversal is obviously flying and hovering at will to experience what it's to be like Iron Man fantasy in a giant open world environment filled with amazing visuals. The third-person gameplay has some major differences by its position as a never-ending game as a service title, reliant on a constant acquisition of loot and repeating missions with slightly different variables. It does also try to lean on developer BioWare's storytelling experience with games like Mass Effect and Dragon Age, but it's obviously Anthem's greatest weakness and more as well after that. Anthem has a very complex backstory, which has the problem of being hopelessly confusing and not in the slightest bit interesting. The gist of it is that you're on a planet that was created by gods that gave up the halfway through, which has left it unstable and constantly spewing out random effects like spawning monsters and magic energy storms. You play as one of the group of the Guardian-like figures called Freelancers, whose job is to do an Iron Man style of work and fight the monsters. In fact, I would say the only strongest moments in the story are the very beginning and the very end, and pretty much nothing else. The problem as well lies that after what has happened during or after the story, absolutely everyone reacts to you as if it has never even happened. Like the finishing the story with no resentments, no happiness, just pretty much absolutely nothing towards you. It does not make sense at all. This made it like the story and the gameplay after were completely separated out for some odd damn reason. Perhaps BioWare expected everyone to read through those copies codex notes before they started playing, but assuming you don't do that, you'll just be confused by a bunch of silly sounding sci-fi jargon of the characters, like for some odd reason immediately angry with you for no clearly explained specifics, as I mentioned anyway. The facial animations is good, voice acting is great, but rather than you talking with other characters, it always seems like they're just, talking to you, not with you. Unlike other BioWare games, conversations are barely interactive and having to slow walk even though we finally can sprint somewhat. But in my opinion, still not fast enough though, around the hub world, mind you, the Fort Tarsus. So while between the missions and during the long minutes of the exposition from obnoxious characters you don't really like, it's not exactly what you call compelling story. Just don't expect a classic BioWare story, but the fact that this is the best storytelling from the looter shooter genre. For example, like Destiny 2 or The Division 1. But the story, to be all in fairness, is still garbage. So as soon as you get to the robot suit refers to as javelins, things immediately get interesting. There are 4 of them, all-rounder, the Ranger that looks a bit roughed up Iron Man version of some sort, the bulkier Colossus that looks like a cheap knockoff from the Hulkbuster, the more maneuverable Interceptor that looks more of a feminist side, or the guy that does a lot of squats, even though the javelins are actually not gender neutral. Well, anyway. And Storm, which is essentially mage class. It can use as elemental attacks from the distance, and personally my favorite as well. So whichever you choose, they all have the same basic controls and actually requires a bit of time to master them individually. So they can include up to 3 special abilities that can be swapped and changed as you earn loot or buy new equipment from the shop. Oh shit, well you guessed it, microtransactions. This is in addition to a range of the standard weapons, mostly bog standard machine guns and rifles, even though the shooting and using any weaponry in your arsenal is just simply not satisfying and very, very bland. I seriously think that BioWare needs to go back into the drawing board and rethink the shooting structure. All of the weapons look identical to each other, no variations or color palettes. If you want higher level weapons, well fuck you, you will just have to go get exactly the same weapon, but at least there is some kind of a variety and rarity, and also that could include the higher level weapons, a modification on top or perk system that could increase some kind of percentage That also does not make sense. What is the percentage? But actually, it's the special abilities where all the interesting ordnance come in, as well as the major difference between the javelins. Like as I mentioned, the Interceptor, which is the most agile and the best at the close quarter combat. The tank-like Colossus is giant minigun. It's great fun too, though it sounds a little bit lazy though. Being a robot wizard, the Storm is different enough from the others with the ability to hover for much longer than anyone else. That's actually a lot of fun in my opinion. So much so that the jack of all trades Ranger, that feels like the closest to the dot. The game's most satisfying element though is definitely the flying. It's all very clear inspired by the Iron Man, with hovering in mid-air and general movement looking and feeling exactly how you imagine from the movies. You can fly or hover whenever you want, and while you overheat quickly, that can be circumvented by both getting better gear or by skimming over the water or going into a steep dive to cool down. The basics of the flying are very easily to pick up, but getting good creates some unique tactical opportunities that are really unlike any other game. Although you can play everything on your own, Anthem is designed primarily as a 4-player co-op game, and more on that a little bit later as well. There are also very satisfying combo systems to get a hang of between the players, as you first prime and then detonate a special attack. Oddly though, the game encourages using matchmaking rather than starting with friends, with specific rewards for doing so, and yet making it very difficult to play with same people in the subsequent missions. This invariability of the lesson of the amount of planned teamwork that gets done and often has you cursing whoever the team leader is as they zoom on ahead, dragging everyone else with them, when you want to take things a bit more slowly or perhaps explore. Whoever you'll be playing with though, you always have to go back to Fort Tarsus, the hub city, after each mission, which is the only place you can change your loadout. This always seems like an unnecessary extra step when you just want to jump back in and play some more. But you also never find out what loot you've got beyond its general rarity until the end of the mission, and that usually ends up making things very anticlimactic, given how unexciting the loot often turns out to be. A lot of the loot is just minor variations of the various guns or gadgets you already have got, and in most cases differences in the stats and perks is rarely obvious in the battle. This is a problem because it means Anthem is a loot-based shooter where a lot of the loot is pretty fucking boring. Even a Javelin cosmetic customization is disappointing when I've not seen any designs that look substantially different from the default. Just the color palette, come on, can be done more than this. The teamwork can be very hit or miss since Anthem is a Destiny clone repetition, or at least replayability value. Don't say it's not. It's also a key part of the appeal that there is something very artificial and unengaging about Anthem's mission design. Everything, even the stronghold dungeons, evolve merely following waypoints and fighting back wave after wave of suddenly spawning monsters. Funny enough, strongholds are the best part of all the missions of Anthem. What makes this worse that there are only 3 strongholds. One of them is pretty much a reused final battle in the story that you get to replay again and again, with your own choice of the option of the difficulty. Like there's easy, normal, hard, Grandmaster 1, Grandmaster 2 and Grandmaster 3. I have played up to Grandmaster 1 and unexpectedly, with no surprise, the only difference that you are just perhaps weaker and enemies eat more bullets as they are way too tough to kill. And this just shows laziness with no advancements of the enemy AI. None whatsoever. Pathetic. And I cannot wait to do Grandmaster 3 and see how super unfair it is. By the time of my second review, I'm definitely gonna mention it. Oh yes, by the way, I personally think that a bit of a sidetrack, I want to mention regarding the Fort Tarsus. It's like the most soulless hub world of a looter shooter game you can ever encounter with. It's so lifeless and useless that you would just think, why even have this here? The developers definitely made this hub world separated as a first-person mode view it has for some odd reason that just separates the game entirely. Makes it so uninteresting and it slows down the pace of the gameplay so much it only aggravates for me anyway to come back in here and walk around like a goddamn snail. I get it, the sprinting is here as I mentioned, but no, it still does not work. First person does not work in this game. It's still laggy, performance issues, and so much more. No thanks. Get rid of the hub world of this in this game altogether. I think would have been done much better adjusted to this game. Instead, it only hurts it more. Alright, now we get to the free mode or free play. Oh god. It's so boring. It's so boring. It's so boring to explore. Sure, it looks beautiful. It definitely does. But that is it. It just looks beautiful. Flying through one big map that looks identical pretty much in everywhere, trying to find something to do constantly and not knowing if you will. Or get disconnected. Yep, even after a patch, I still got disconnected. Still typical, I guess. The big problem is the repetitiveness as well in Anthem will get to you fast. It's just not pretty after playing 3 variations of missions or public events. Thankfully, Titans can sometimes spice things up, but not successfully either. For example, after trying to take down with only a slither of the health remains, but only get disconnected and waste your damn time. Or getting forced teleported because you are too far from your friendly squad leader. Yep, you still cannot go in a free mode alone without a squad. The game also has big problems with the scaling. Pretty much everything is scaled up to 4 players, and if you enter a stronghold and perhaps a player or players are DDoS or getting disconnected, well shit, good luck trying to finish the damn 4 times larger amount of enemies that you would typically have. It's actually be better to restart the whole damn mission or stronghold again. Oh, but don't get me started on those loading screens. What is this, 1999? There are just an insane amount of them. Seamless world my ass, BioWare. What the fuck was that all about? You know what? No. I'm not going to bother talking about this. I'll let someone else to speak it for me, or I'm just gonna go fucking nuts.
You're asking me, are loading screens really that big of a deal? Well, yeah. I mean, just imagine a loading screen takes 20 seconds, right? And that's generous. Loading screens usually take a lot longer than 20 seconds. But let's say that a loading screen takes 20 seconds. Well, I had one instance where I loaded in for the mission, which is a loading screen. Then I disconnected, because that still happens a lot, which meant that I got a loading screen. Then I reconnected, which means that I had another loading screen. Then I was too far from my team when I was playing, which also means you get teleported and you get a loading screen. Then the area that I got teleported to was just cleared by my team because they still continued doing the mission while I was trying to load in, which meant we had to go into a cave, the next part of the mission, which was another loading screen. We killed the boss in about 2 minutes, and then we got another loading screen to get to the reward screen. And then we got another loading screen to get to Fort Tarsus. And then we loaded up the next mission, which meant there was another loading screen. You get the point.
They are the worst loading screens I have ever experienced in a video game. They completely destroy the experience. Want to look at your loadout? Loading screen. Want to close your loadout? Loading screen. Want to launch into a mission? Really long loading screen. Took too long to load? Another loading screen while you get teleported to your teammates. Go inside a cave? Another loading screen. Come outside of said cave? Another loading screen. Finish the mission, loading screen. Arrive at the post-reward screen, which is completely fucking useless, by the way. Why is this in the game? Anyway, close the post-reward screen, loading screen, arrive back at Fort Tarsus. Want to equip your new upgrades? I think you get the picture at this point.
So the bosses are particularly bad and only magnify the faults of the Destiny's Ward's bullet spongy enemies by always going on forever and constantly finding excuses for your javelins not to be able to fly. The enemy design in general are also horribly generic, a mishmash of other people's ideas from every sci-fi game, which is a terrible shame in my personal opinion. The artificial intelligence is bad though and prone to bugs. Anthem reminded me very much of all those doomed cinematic universes that have tried to or willed themselves into existence in the wake of the Marvel's great success, where companies created expansive plans and promotional trailers before the first movies even out, and then have to scrap everything when they realize the initial product doesn't justify any of their attention. As a games as a service title, Anthem will no doubt undergo enormous changes in the future, but its foundations are a giant damn mess. Not in the terms of gameplay necessarily, but the structure and the whole reason why you would want to come back and again and again. That doesn't mean that the concept can't be turned around later down the line, but whether that's Anthem's destiny, it's impossible to say at the moment, as it is very early, and we do not know if BioWare will keep their words and keep updating Anthem. I personally think that Anthem needs to fix its issues first, then release its contents down the line, not the other way around. And yet, EA, as you know, EA have never proven to be the most patient publisher. When something is underperforming, you already know what they do. I hope that they give Anthem a chance to be fixed and BioWare not to get shut down due to the financial failure, because I'm sure there are failures on this Anthem expectations. Because I would like to see Anthem succeed in the future, even if it's a big giant mess of a game right now. So Anthem ensured, there are flashes of possibilities, right? Especially when it comes to flying, but confused storytelling, boring loot, and unsatisfying missions, and unsatisfying shooting don't justify the game's massive time investment that BioWare has been making for over 6 years. What the fuck were they even doing? And why in the world did this game come out so early? It's obviously that this game was not finished and still very early in its development. So I would say that the biggest thing regarding Anthem is that its traversal system is great, with some of the best flying in the mainstream game. The 4 javelins are all engaging differently, with interesting abilities and excellent graphics as well. And the shitty things, well, as I mentioned, the loot are uninteresting, so as the cosmetic options, which is a bit of a problem in a looter-based shooter. Dull mission design, dumb AIs, awful storytelling, way too many loading screens, and muddled co-op options. If I would have to give a score, usually I don't give scores to reviews, but you know what, I'm gonna do it anyway. For day 1 of 22nd of February, Anthem's release on PlayStation 4 specifically, I would give it just a general, mediocre game, 5 out of 10. Nothing special, does not do anything innovative. The only good thing, as I mentioned, and there are way too many problems. The problems outweighed the goods. So unfortunately, I'm gonna have to wait and see how will this be turned around, or will this be just a dumpster fire and will burn in hell forever. We do not know, unfortunately. Anyway, well, thank you so much for watching my review. Please also consider donating on my Subscriber Star or GoFundMe page. Take a look at my Twitter. All the links down below in the description. Like and subscribe. Hit that bell notification at the side. I'm going to let you go now. Have an awesome day.